Top 10 BMFs in the UFC, dude. You see a lot of UFC greatest of all time lists, right? But I haven't seen many baddest mofo lists, right? And so I'm going to be listing the top 10 baddest motherfuckers in the UFC, in my opinion. And here's the criteria: it's not about winning fights. I don't even care about holding the BMF belt, right? It's about having super entertaining fights, leaving everything in the cage, not point fighting, and will sometimes be a little bit reckless for the fans and be super entertaining and just their general vibe. That's what I'm going off of. Starting off with number 10, Yuri Prohaska, dude. Yuri Prohaska is a badass samurai, dude. And he had a amazing fight with Glover that was super, one of the most entertaining fights to watch in my opinion. Something, if you haven't watched it, you need to fucking watch that shit. It's hype as hell, dude. And he is known for his unique fighting style and takes a lot of damage. You know, you're not going to see Yuri point fighting, right? And also, he has like a 90% KO rate, dude, or something insane. It's kind of crazy. So he's definitely one of the most entertaining fighters. His samurai mindset is pretty badass because you know that that's not a character he's playing, right? You know that Yuri believes everything he says, especially when like he's accusing Alex Pereira of like black magic. Like that's just such a Yuri thing to do, and I think all this that makes him deserve the number 10 spot. And number 9, we have Michael Chandler, dude. And I know what you're saying, Michael Chandler. He loses all his fights, or almost all his fights, but it's still super entertaining. And if Michael Chandler's fighting, you know he's gonna leave it all out there, right? He will literally walk towards you with his hands completely down, like sticking his tongue out and making faces and shit and just mocking you. Not even trying to throw a punch and just taking damage, dude. But it's super entertaining, and you gotta admit, it's super badass to watch. And the danger is always there against him, dude. The last round against Oliveira in the second fight, I literally got a fucking heart attack, dude, because the danger is always there with Chandler, man, and you know anything can happen at any moment. He's one of the most exciting guys in the UFC. Love him or hate him. I think Michael Chandler is overhated, man. I mean, I get it, calling out McGregor, like, still, but his fights are super entertaining, even if he's almost always on the losing end, right? And number 8, we have Khalil Roundtree. I know some of you guys might be thinking, oh, recency bias, dude. He had one good fight. And it's like, sure, but I think that one fight with Pereira is special because he didn't shoot any takedowns against Pereira, and the narrative going into that fight, it was kind of Pereira like accusing Khalil of being like, oh, I know you're gonna shoot takedowns, and Khalil was like promising the fans, I promise you guys, I'm not gonna shoot, and he left everything in the octagon in that fight, dude. He fucking went out on his shield like a warrior, and it was super badass. And also at the end, he took his loss super well. He gained a lot of respect from the fan base, unlike Jamal Hill, and people loved him, and people loved him for his performance. And he actually gave Pereira probably one of his toughest fights at light heavyweight. Besides Jan Blachowicz, Khalil was probably the toughest. Only went to make it to the fourth round with a monster like Pereira, right? And the thing that I think makes this even more special is I think Khalil could have won. He could have won his fight against Pereira if he would have just mixed in the takedowns, but he refused to. I don't know if he did it for the fans. I don't know why he did it, but he refused to because there were some situations where Pereira was super vulnerable for a takedown. Like at the beginning of the fight, he went out with some like kick down the middle and completely missed. Khalil probably could have took him down there if he really wanted to. It would have been a smart move because then Pereira would have had to been aware of the wrestling threat, and it would have gave him an advantage potentially. He could have won the fight, but he didn't, and I think that's pretty badass. So for that in and of itself, I think he deserves number 8. Number 7, we have Alexander Volkanovski, dude. Alexander Volkanovski is a fucking badass, bro. He had an amazing performance against Islam Makhachev, and Islam was like a minus 300 something favorite going into that fight. He just submitted Charles Oliveira. Everybody thought that Islam was essentially unstoppable. Everyone thought that, or most people thought, he was going to clearly beat Volk. But Volk had an amazing performance. Almost finished Islam in the last round, dude. I'm an Islam fan, but go rewatch that 5th round, dude. Islam, the last like 2.5 minutes, is just staring at the clock, man. He's like wishing for the fucking timer to be up, And he defended the takedowns, most of the takedowns, and almost finished him in the 5th round. And I think that in and of itself was and the narrative going in that Islam was just this monster, and Alexander Volkanovski coming out and doing what he does, I think that deserves him a spot here. Also, he survived the choke against Brian Ortega, a guy who was great at jiu-jitsu. You shouldn't survive this position, right? If you were anybody else who were in that position, they're tapping out, right? But not this motherfucker, dude. This guy is too badass. He somehow survived this shit. I don't know how. And also...
Hey, Nate, I want to say something. Everyone back home. Everyone, I don't care if you love me or hate me, stand up for yourself. People be trying to bring me down. I stood up and look at me now. No one can bring me down anymore. Stand up for yourself.
Dude gave one of the most badass speeches after 50-45ing Max Holloway, which is absolutely an insane stat. Not to mention the absolutely legendary title run at featherweight he went on. You know, that in and of itself, along with all this, gives him my number 7. Number 6, Dan Ige. And some of you guys are going to be mad that he is above Volkanovski. But dude, he stepped up on 4 hours notice. Okay, Volk did 2 weeks notice. 4 hours notice? Dude was on his fucking couch, just chilling. Like, hey, you want to fight on one of the biggest cards of all time, UFC 300? It's just like, sure, dude, sure. Like, and he actually went out there and won the 3rd round. I was watching that fight. I actually thought he might get the finish there. Like, it looked like Diego Lopez was in some serious trouble in that 3rd round, especially against a contender like Diego Lopez, who's on the rise. It's super impressive. Also, he just fights like a dog, bro. I mean, his fights are dog fights, dude. He'll randomly just KO people. It's fucking awesome, dude. So, but the biggest thing, I think, stepping up like 4 hours notice, that's insane, dude. Like, nobody is doing that except for Dan Ige. And number 5 is Dustin the Diamond Poirier. And we have a lot of these 155 lightweight guys who kind of just fight each other on this list, but how can you not have those guys here, right? Because lightweight is one of the most badass divisions. It's one of the divisions where the guys have a lot of power, a lot of athleticism, and so it's naturally just bound to be one of the most exciting divisions. So we do have a lot of those guys on here. So, and he always has entertaining fights, right? They're always wars, dude. And he has some of the best fights against Hooker, Michael Chandler, and Islam Makhachev, dude. So, and he's an absolute legend. Been in the UFC for I don't even know how long. His story is great too, almost touching gold, but not being able to quite get there because he fought like 3 of the best lightweights of all time as champions, So you kind of resonate with this guy a little bit. And also his fight with Justin Gaethje, dude. I mean, every single fight this guy has, it's not going to be boring, dude. Every single time Poirier is fighting, you have to watch, dude, because something crazy is going to happen. And another thing, I didn't put this, but how close in each of his title fights he came to becoming champion. Against Khabib, he was the closest person to beating Khabib with that guillotine choke, dude. That was close, that was tight. It was almost in. And Khabib somehow managed to get out. And against Charles Oliveira, Dustin knocked him down the 1st round, right? And of course, Charles Oliveira came back, that's what he does. But he got very close in those 2 fights. In his fight against Islam Makhachev, everyone thought that he was going to get finished in like the 1st or 2nd round. Let's be real, we were kind of rooting for Dustin in the back of our minds, but we weren't giving him a lot of credit to actually win the fight. And he went out there, and I'm not going to say he almost won, but he put on a much better performance than all of us were expecting, right? And you could kind of see, like, he was planning to retire after that, but after a performance like that, he's like, well, I might have one more run at this, I still got this in me, right? So for that, I'm putting him at number 5. At number 4, somebody who beat Poirier, Charles Oliveira, dude. Charles Oliveira, even when he was champion, fights like an absolute berserker, dude. It's insane. And he gets hit hard in all of his fights. And he comes back and wins. And it's super inspiring. And also his story. He used to be known as kind of quitter, I remember just fighting against Max Holloway. He quit like 40 seconds. And I'm not going to say quit because he tore his esophagus, right? But at the end of the day, he used to have a reputation of quitting. And then he has a child. And then that lights a fire in him, dude. And then he just goes out on this rampage, dominating people, dominating the lightweight division, dude. And let's just think about this. This fight against Dustin Poirier, he got dropped bad and finished him in the 3rd round. Fight against Gaethje, dropped bad and went and finished him in the 1st round. The first fight with Michael Chandler, in the 1st round, he was getting beat up, dude. He was getting beat up bad. Then immediately second round, KO's Michael Chandler. And the second fight with Michael Chandler, he's winning, and he's comfortably winning. He looks like a new version of himself. In the fifth round, it happens again, but he survives and wins by decision. I mean, in this dude's fights, he's always getting hit hard, and he's not quitting this time, and it's super entertaining because he'll fight that way even as a champion. At number 3, I have Nate Diaz, dude, and the reason I put down is just it's Nate Diaz. I don't even think I have to say anything else. Like, it's Nate Diaz, and his energy I don't think will ever be replicated in the UFC. Just what he brought, he was so unique, such an interesting character, and you have to put this guy on here, dude. In all of his fights, like, he could completely lose a fight, he could get completely beat up in a fight, and some people would still be able to make edits of him, you know, from that fight, because that's just Nate Diaz, bro. Like, it's like you see it in all the comment sections, like, Nate never loses a fight, he just runs out of time, right?
Joseph. Nate Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel? Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
It's just that vibe for Diaz, you know? And it's also like a meme that, like, Nate Diaz doesn't even take these fights seriously. Like, he gives everyone the Stockton slap while he's fighting. And his fight with Leon Edwards, dude, he almost finished Leon Edwards at the very end of the fight in the 5th round. But instead of, you know, following up with shots, he just decides to point at Leon Edwards. And sure, it's one of the coldest pictures in UFC history. But come on, Nate, just beat him up, dude. Beat him up. But can you imagine? That would be the best outcome for the UFC if Diaz would have beat Leon Edwards. And then, because then Leon Edwards would have never knocked out Kamaru Usman. And then we wouldn't have had one of the most boring champions of all time in the welterweight division, dude. Leon Edwards sucks, bro. I hate him. Sorry, that might be a little bit mean, but I'm not a big fan of Edwards. Now, number 2, Justin Gaethje, and I just want to show you some of his quotes, right?
I don't usually plan on being alive the day after my fight, so hopefully I'm there on Sunday.
You know, I didn't get in the sport to win or lose. It's an entertainment factor for me, and I will be known as and remembered as one of the most entertaining fighters that ever did it. And, you know, I'm content with what just happened, as stupid and crazy as that sounds. You know, I felt so comfortable in there, so good. The best I've ever felt. I don't fight to win or lose, as stupid and crazy as I am. And that sounds, I go in there to entertain people. This is an entertainment business. I fight for money, and you know that what I do helps me get paid a lot of money.
Another quote: "I'm not promising success. I'm not promising that. I promise you that I will get knocked out in the next, like, 10 fights, because it's a game of freaking centimeters and fractions of seconds, dude." He literally admitting, yeah, I'm gonna get knocked out. I don't even care, bro. With my fighting style, I am going to get knocked out. That's, like, confirmed. And he's just like, I don't care, man. I just want to entertain you guys. There's nothing more badass than that. It doesn't get more badass than that, dude. Not to mention, all of his fights, hyper entertaining, bro. You never know what's gonna happen with him. Also, Gaethje has, like, 13 fight bonuses, dude. Because every single fight he's in, there's just fireworks, man. And he said in an interview, I didn't get the clip, but he said his biggest fear wasn't losing a fight. It was going out there and having a boring fight. That's his biggest fear, because he just wants to entertain the fans. And some of these guys are like, oh, I fight for legacy. I want to have best legacy in UFC. Gaethje is just like, I just want to be the most entertaining guy out there. And that's what I want to be remembered for. And for that reason, I have to put him at number 2. But number 1, I shouldn't even have to say who it is. You guys should already be saying the name out loud, dude. You guys know who number 1 is. And number 1 is Bilal Muhammad, dude. Bilal Muhammad, an absolute baddest motherfucker in the sport. No, I'm kidding. It's Max Holloway, of course. But could you imagine Bilal Muhammad at number 1? I love Bilal Muhammad, but unfortunately, I cannot put him on this list, right? He is an absolute legend. Been in the UFC since he was 20 years old, because he was like a little baby, man. A little baby Max. Prepubescent Max. Been in the UFC. And he is the first one to do the point down move, dude. He did that long time ago, man. Now, that's after the Gaethje fight, that's become so much more popularized, right? We've seen people do that, and they don't do it as well, dude. Sometimes they point down and, like, back up and stuff. That's Max's move, dude. He made that. He made a move, and now other people in the UFC are trying to replicate that. I mean, Holloway is just really something special. And also, he has the most significant strikes landed in the UFC history, 3,706. Second place, 2,603, dude. Over 1,000 strikes, more than second place. How can you not enjoy this guy's fights, dude? And his fighting style, the volume, heavy, insane cardio, a crazy chin. This dude is an absolute legend, and I consider him the baddest motherfucker in the UFC. And of course, his legendary last second knockout over Gaethje is probably his best moment. And count it up.
Coaches. He points out the DC. He's even listening to the commentary team.
Not to mention Max Holloway essentially going undefeated at featherweight, except for Volkanovski and besides, Ilia Topuria now. But he was like, but he beat everybody at featherweight, just not Volkanovski, and had one of the best featherweight title runs, in my opinion. So I have Holloway at number 1, but you can let me know if you agree or disagree with this list. And I had some honorable mentions that I decided not to put on. First off, Alex Pereira, didn't put him. I totally could understand if someone does put him on here, though. Dan Hooker. I thought about putting Dan Hooker, but I feel like I put too many of the 155 guys who just keeps on fighting each other, and I wanted to try to kind of change it up. Also got Joaquin Buckley, going on his welterweight insane streak that he's on now is pretty badass. And I have Ilia Topuria, but I didn't want to put him on here just because he's knocking out my favorite fighters, so I just can't justify him being on here. I just want to erase that from my mind, but it is what it is at this point. But thank you for watching, if you're here. And I'm curious, how do you like the slideshow style of videos? Because I'm new to this, if there's something I should change, then I'll try to do it, but just wondering if anybody has an opinion on them. Are they great? Are they awful? I don't care. Let me know.